Fellow compatriots, hello. This is Akase Poladian from the Office for the High Commissioner for Diaspora Affairs. It is a pleasure to be here. We apologize for the delay. It was for technical reasons. I hope everybody's following up right now. I am also a fellow repatriate who moved to Armenia 2.5 years ago, and I have the pleasure to work with the team at the Office of the High Commissioner. And now I would leave the floor to Mr. Sinanyan for the live discussion.
Thank you, Akatia. Good morning and good evening, I guess in the US and the evening at this point, everyone. Hope you're doing well. The purpose of today's conference is to update our activities from last year, but more so to give an overview of our plans for year 2021. As you know, last year was a difficult one to say the least, both with respect to COVID creating problems for us, and as well as, of course, the catastrophic war that was imposed upon us by Azerbaijan and Turkey. As you know, most of our programs, because of COVID, because of the loss of physical contact with the diaspora, were postponed or canceled in 2020, with the notable exception of the program IGORS, about which we'll speak more in detail coming up. Hoping that this year, with the various vaccines available for COVID, the physical connection will be reestablished, and our programs will move forward as planned. So without much more, let's start with the PowerPoint presentation. The first page was merely our okay, there we go. Okay, so the first page is merely an introductory page. Why don't we move on to the second slide? And the second slide is about the IGORS program. So briefly, any of you are aware, last year we instituted the IGORS program, which roughly translated means let's get to work in Armenian. And the purpose of the program was to bring professionals from the diaspora and inject them into the Armenian government, various structures of the Armenian government, thereby connecting an organic link between the diaspora and Armenia, and at the same time help Armenia with its human resources, because Armenia is in dire need of well-qualified professionals, especially in its government. And this war merely accentuated problems that we have: organizational skills, with managerial skills, leadership skills in the government, and thereby, I believe, made it ever more so clear how important programs like IGORS are for Armenia. Last year, we had initially planned for 20 fellows as part of IGORS program, but due to the overwhelming interest in the program, we had more than 800 applicants for 20 spots. We expanded the program to 100 possible positions. And again, because of COVID and because of the war, that number has been dwindled down to a lower number. Currently, there are 51 professionals from the diaspora working in 19 ministries and other departments within the Armenian government, doing some very productive and creative work, and coming up with their own programs that they're starting to implement within the ministries where they work. Outside of the government, also some of our IGORS professionals are involved in the Human Rights Defender's Office of the High Commissioner of Diaspora Affairs, as well as the Education Inspectorate of the government of Armenia. We have participants from many countries, and you can see that on the next slide. There you go. We have participants from 16 countries, and currently the number of the fellows is at 51. For the next year, we're planning on continuing IGORTS. It's a very popular program and also a very productive one. And we've decided to keep the number of fellows at 60, and also want to include the government of Artsakh as beneficiaries of Igor's program. That way we can send professionals, or those that are willing to work for the government of Artsakh for approximately a year. Next slide relates to our work with medical professionals. Clearly with COVID, medical profession and the need for healthcare was front and center all throughout 2020. It also gave us an opportunity to widen our cooperation with those organizations that are active in the medical field, as well as individual doctors. To give you some facts, I'll merely state that during the COVID period, in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, we organized numerous Zoom trainings, approximately 40 webinars, during which approximately 1,000 healthcare professionals participated, both from the Armenian and from diaspora, exchanged knowledge and exchanged information about COVID. And this exchange was very, very important during the height of the COVID period, at the time when the disease itself was very misunderstood and there wasn't that much known about it. So exchange of information also became very important. We'll continue this work next year, but of course now we have the issue of the war and the consequences of war. As you may imagine, there are many Armenian soldiers that have been wounded. We have approximately 120 amputees from the war, and we have hundreds, if not thousands, of soldiers that have returned with various degrees of psychological issues, PTSD and such, need very close care and very professional care, sometimes a type of care that is not largely available in Armenia. So for those purposes, we'll continue working with our Ministry of Health as well as healthcare professionals to make sure that our soldiers not only receive the best prosthetics available in the world, but also the type of psychological care that they need, both in the short term and the long term, to return them to normal life as much as possible. If we can move to the next slide, please. Repatriation. Repatriation still remains a key goal and a strategic issue for the Office of the High Commissioner, as well as for Armenia in general. I'm going to give you some numbers, statistical numbers, as to what has happened with repatriation in the past year and a half. Since June of 2019 until the end of 2020, 1,000 repatriates have physically visited our office, and 3,000 have reached out to us through other means of communication. The repats wishing to repatriate are mainly from 20 countries, and most of them contact us related to customs issues, housing, education, citizenship, healthcare, business relations, and employment. In 2019, 13,259 Armenians holding foreign passports have acquired Armenian citizenship. 1,351 received permanent residency in Armenia, and 540 received temporary residency status. From January 1 of 2020 until the end of the year, 3,640 Armenians who are foreign nationals acquired Armenian citizenship. 340 received permanent residency in Armenia. 128 received temporary residency status. Many of our compatriots who've repatriated to Armenia or hold dual citizenship have not applied to our office for support and advice. So these are people who've repatriated, but we have not had contact. We continue supporting Syrian Armenians, and since 2019, 42 Syrian Armenians have reached out to us. For the past year and a half, about 300 Syrian Armenians have applied for employment, health and medical care, housing assistance, education, legal, and other issues. Also, in 2020, especially following the explosion in Beirut, Lebanon, we experienced an inflow of repatriates from Beirut. Before the war, the number stood at approximately 1,400. And of course, we were front and center in helping those folks come and adjust as quickly as possible, and that work will continue. If we can go to the next slide, Integration Center. In order to facilitate the repatriation process, we intend to move forward with the Integration Center project, which is an all-encompassing location, a center where everyone that repatriates can go to the day after they arrive and have all their paperwork taken care of, all their basic needs such as passport issues, education for the children, any documentation that needs to be submitted for one reason or another. Basically, we've taken the Israeli model for integration centers and have copied it, mimicked it. We were supposed to launch the program at January 1 of 2021, but because of the war, construction and preparation work were postponed. So we're hoping to get this going by mid-year in 2021, because it's a very important project. Like I said, everyone that comes to Armenia has decided to take that role, to take that road and take that step. Need to know that there is a one-stop shop where their issues, their problems will be taken care of. Let's move to the next project, next slide, which is the Kyle Depitun program. On the path to repatriation, of course, we value the work that's being done with the youth, and one of the programs that we inherited from the Diaspora Ministry is the Depitun, or as it is currently known, Kyle Depitun program. This program brings hundreds of youth to Armenia during the summer for a 2-week period. And during that period, they're able to immerse themselves in Armenian culture, to travel in Armenia, to see the sights and sounds, and connect and develop a personal physical connection with the homeland. We also see it as a kind of a first step to eventually repatriation, because all repatriation starts with the psychological repatriation. This is certainly a step in that direction. Last year, we were unable to conduct this program as usual. However, we did conduct the program in a more limited manner online, as you may imagine. And 250 young diasporans from 30 countries participated in it. Next year, this year, in this summer, we will conduct 6 camps for Kyle Depitun, which will involve a total of 800 children from the diaspora. And we hope that the COVID conditions will subside and allow us to conduct this very, very important program. Next program is our Young Leadership Program, which we've also begun to call Diaspora Youth Ambassador Program. In this program, which is limited in number and scope, we invite 40 college-age youth to come to Armenia and again immerse themselves in the Armenian life, to meet with government officials, to go to cultural facilities, to travel throughout Armenia. And our goal is to turn these individuals into ambassadors, not in the sort of legal sense, but in a more spiritual sense, our ambassadors in the diaspora. This year, in 2020, we were unable to conduct this program for obvious reasons because of COVID. Next year, well, this summer, next summer, we intend to have 40 participants in the program. And again, if it does not create any problems for us, we will conduct this program once again. Our next, so we can move on to the next slide, please. Yes, Diaspora Connected. Well, COVID disrupted the physical connection between Armenian diaspora. I know that hundreds of thousands of diasporans, if not a million, were hoping to travel to Armenia this summer. However, because of COVID, Armenia was shut down, as were most other countries in the world. In order to not entirely lose the connection between the diaspora and Armenia, we commenced the Diaspora Connected program, which was in the format of Zoom meetings with various individuals, various organizations in the diaspora, and talk about relevant issues that are important for both the diaspora and Armenia. And as part of that program, we had numerous meetings with community organizations and individuals, and continued these meetings up to date. Even in 2021, we've continued holding these meetings because, again, until a solid physical connection is established, we have to rely on online connection. And in fact, even when COVID is gone, and hopefully something that we're able to deal with much better, we believe that these Diaspora Connected format Zoom meetings and webinars are very important and should continue regardless of whether there's COVID or not. We can move on to the next slide. Next slide are the community visits. Of course, nothing replaces physical connection. Nothing replaces face-to-face communication with our compatriots in the diaspora. And due to COVID, we've been unable to travel since late February of last year. The only official trip that I've been able to make was to Lebanon immediately following the explosion. Of course, now that the flight bans and the restrictions are being lifted in some of the countries, we are restarting community visits, and we're going to start, as has become tradition, with Russia. Most likely in the next 2 weeks, we'll be visiting Russia again, followed by France. And periodically visit our communities and talk to them, explain to them what the issues or problems are. We know that our communities throughout the diaspora have many questions that need to be answered and addressed. And there's no reason we should delay that. And be able to look each other in the eye and be truthful about issues. We can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. Mapping the diaspora. So sometime late 2019, we announced our goal to map the potential, human and professional potential of the diaspora. Armenian people are an ingenious people. They're very intelligent. They're very successful. And often in Armenia, you hear, especially politicians, public officials, talk about the fact that we don't have natural resources, but we have human resources. That's the only resource that we have. But really, no one has any clear idea of what that resource is, where it's located, how to get in touch with it, how to mobilize that resource, how to capitalize on that resource. And the first step towards that is to actually have a complete and full database of who's who in the diaspora, a comprehensive list of folks in various professions and various vocations. And we commenced that process sometime last year. Again, because of the war, the process was delayed, but we're back on track. And in the next 6 months, we will have a living document, which will be updated in perpetuity to make sure that we not only know who is who, but we know how to get in contact with them so that we utilize them, we know how to mobilize this resource. Otherwise, it's a resource that's underutilized at best or goes to waste, which is the case most frequently. So, if we can move on to the next slide, investments and charity. Well, charity, especially diasporan charity, has been sort of the elephant in the room for the last 30 years since the Gyumri earthquake and since Armenia's independence. And it's very important, unfortunately, remains important because of Armenia's needs. After the war, a lot of the charitable organizations have become much more active in Armenia, Artsakh, and they do very important, invaluable work in the homeland. Of course, the desire is to move away from the charitable work model more towards the investment model, investing in Armenia's economy, improving its economy so that Armenia itself can take care of its social needs, humanitarian needs. And that process has been very problematic up until today. There is still, despite the virtual disappearance of systemic corruption in Armenia, there's still a lot of incompetence, there's still a lot of administrative pull and tug and nonsense that impedes the quick development of Armenia's economy and impedes investments being made in Armenia. These are systemic problems. These are also cultural problems that we've inherited by being part of empires that weren't exactly friendly to investments. But while these problems are being worked out, our office is there to assist investors realize their investments very fast. And this is very important for us because if we don't develop the economy, if Armenia's economy doesn't become modern, vibrant, dynamic force, then we will not be able to have powerful military, we will not be able to have science and knowledge, education, and that'll doom our nation, doom our So, economy is everything, and investments are very important today, more so than ever before. Next slide, please. Yes. So the model of Armenian diaspora and interaction has unfortunately been very one-sided. It's always been Armenia is here and the diaspora is there, and diaspora needs to help Armenia. And, other than periodic Armenian diaspora conferences, there hasn't been any serious attempt made to involve in the diaspora in Armenia's political life, Armenia's social life, and we believe that quite the opposite needs to happen. We need to achieve maximum level of integration between the diaspora and Armenia. Our Igor's program is one such example where on a certain level we've opened up the Armenian government system to diasporan professionals, but we believe that the involvement needs to be much deeper. For example, we have great professionals living outside Armenia's borders, and they are unable to, for example, be appointed as government minister because of constitutional impediments, because of legal impediments. These are constitutional impediments that were created artificially in the last 15 years. And as a result, the diaspora Armenian cannot move to Armenia, for example, put their candidacy up for election. They cannot be the best professional and be appointed as minister in the government. And all these impediments, all the legal problems, barriers need to be removed in order for the diaspora to have a chance more deeply contribute to Armenia's future. Another issue that we believe needs to be eliminated is any impediment to the creation of not a legislative but a consultative body within the Armenian parliament representing the diaspora. In other words, have a senate, or we can call it whatever we want, an upper chamber of the parliament, which, although not having legislative powers, can have a consultative moral voice in the Armenian parliament composed of the diaspora. We believe this body, if we find the ultimate methodology for electing this body of the diaspora, because I think that's going to be more of an impediment than anything else, if we can create this body, it'll play a very, very important psychological and moral role in the shaping of Armenia's legislation, as well as Armenia's policies. And that will hopefully be subject matter, or one of the subject matters, of any upcoming Armenia-Diaspora conference, and we hope that such a conference can be held in the near future. We were planning on holding it in the summer of 2020. Of course, COVID took care of that, but hopefully very soon we'll be able to conduct such a summit and have the diaspora offer its own ideas of how we can accomplish the creation of a parliamentary chamber that represents the diaspora. Artsakh, obviously very hard time for Armenian Artsakh. We've lost enormous amount of our territories, our homeland, but a good chunk of Artsakh is still populated by Armenians, and we need to make sure that folks that are there remain there, are connected to their land, connected to Artsakh itself, and do not choose to leave either for Armenia or for foreign countries. I visited Artsakh about 7-8 days ago with a delegation composed of Armenia's Social Security Minister, Armenia's Urban Planning Ministry Directory, held a number of meetings with Armenian officials in Artsakh, better acquainted myself with the reality on the ground, and came back with projects the projects that are addressing Artsakh's most urgent needs. If any of you are interested in helping Artsakh or doing work with us directed towards improving the situation in Artsakh, please contact our office. We'll be more than happy to give you some ideas. I do want to confirm the fact that approximately 95,000 Armenians currently reside in Artsakh, and we need to do everything not only for that number to remain, but also to make sure that it goes back to the original 120, 130,000, and hopefully grow in the future. Key issue in Artsakh, which is the next slide, is reconstruction. Reconstruction is very important because approximately 10,000 families have lost homes, their homes in Artsakh, either due to bombing or because they were residents of the liberated territories that have now been occupied by Azerbaijan. And we need to make sure that these folks choose to remain in Artsakh and don't leave those territories that are under our control. So this work becomes very important. This is work that's ongoing. Again, those individuals and organizations that want to help with this regard, please get in touch with our office. We'll be more than happy to share our thoughts and ideas with you. That's all I have on my presentation. I do want to make sure that you visit our website at diaspora@gov.am, or email diaspora.gov.am, or email us at diaspora@gov.am. Keep in touch with our office. Our website is pretty complete and comprehensive, and is updated very systematically. Please use that as a resource, and feel free to call our office. We're there to serve our people, whether in Armenia or diaspora. I want to stress that these are very hard times, and I know that a lot of the diaspora is still mourning, and they're still in the shock resulting from the fortunate, catastrophic outcome of this war. But work cannot wait. We have needs that need to be addressed right now, and we need to work until we've overcome this emergency situation. Um, the other issues are the other issues. Obviously, those need to be addressed as well, but we can't create a vacuum. At a time like this, Armenia and Artsakh need its diaspora a lot right now. So hopefully, work together. I hope that all of you are planning to visit Armenia this summer. Hopefully, COVID allows it, because we miss you all, and see you here soon. I'm happy to answer any questions that there may be.
Thank you, Mr. for your valuable and for the presentation. We're going to start with a few questions that we have received by our live broadcasters who are participating and listening to our presentation. So a few questions in relation to EGOTS. Will the same selection criteria be in place for the EGOTS program for 2021-2022?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the questions that kept interrupting? Something about IGLORTS, the criterion for IGLORTS?
Yes, will the criteria be used for the EGOTS program for 2021-2022?
Yes, the criteria will be the same. The geographic territory, which will be serviced by EGOTS, will be expanded in the sense that now the ministries in Artsakh are also desperately in need of professionals from the diaspora, and they've specifically requested as many as we can provide. But the criteria are the same. We will announce competition probably beginning of March. By June, folks will have passed their first stage of interviews, or maybe even all the stages of interviews. And 60 of them, the 60 finalists, will be placed with the ministries. If folks have ideas about criteria, they think that some of our criteria is faulty or it's not fair, we're always open to constructive ideas. Please feel free to provide them to us. We're happy to read them and
A second question about will there be possibility to also be placed in the state bodies of Artsakh and the regions of Armenia?
Answered about Artsakh, so the answer is yes. In state regions, of course, this year we'll probably work more actively with the governors. Last year, one of the governors specifically asked for specialists from the diaspora. One of the governors, because of heavy investments from the Middle East, is actually interested in having a deputy governor from Lebanon or Syria, a good specialist. So if there are persons like that that are interested, please let us know. It's one of the most beautiful parts of Armenia, and I'm sure it'll be very interesting.
Thank you, Mr. Sinanyan. Another question is in regards to our work strategy with the diasporan communities. Do you foresee any changes to the vision and the work strategy of the office, particularly in the post-war period?
I can tell you with the most confidence that our vision in Armenian diaspora integration hasn't changed. We always knew that Armenia badly needs its diaspora resource, and whatever relationship there is with diaspora has to be based on sincerity and truth. On the one part, Armenia needs to involve diasporans deeply in Armenian life, not create artificial impediments, and not only expect financial support. On the other part, the diasporans need to understand that often their sort of understanding and expectations of Armenia and Armenian people who reside in Armenia are not entirely in unison with the realities in Armenia. Even as I read some of these commentaries. I don't have time to read all, I read some of these commentaries from a couple of people besmirching people in Armenia and the government of Armenia. They have to understand this is the only government that was actually elected by the people of Armenia. And to this day, the people in Armenia choose to keep this government. So before making these comments, we have to understand that the ultimate power in Armenia today, as opposed to the period before 2018, belongs to the people of Armenia. And it's the people of Armenia that will decide who will govern them, who will rule this country. And if anyone wants to impact that situation in a meaningful way, come on down. Pack up your bags, move to Armenia, become a resident here, become a citizen, and vote your conscience and change the reality as you see fit. Otherwise, it's hard. You're going to basically be frustrated, and you're going to accuse the Armenian people, the citizens of the Republic of Armenia, of this and that, and that's not. So, again, no need to be angry. No, I understand the frustration. I understand the pain. But let's try to be a little constructive. Again, best way to influence the situation, move on down here. I would love nothing more than to have critical mass of diaspora Armenians living in Hayastan. Really bring some cultural change, cultural improvement, improvement in the work ethic, improvement in the outlook and understanding of the world. But we need more diasporans to come and live here in order for that to happen. Otherwise, it's just angry rhetoric.
Another question, more specifically with our work with the Armenian community in the US, how do you see the future grounds of cooperation with the Armenian community in the United States?
The community, of course, is ongoing. It's not as deep as I'd like for it to be, obviously, myself being there and knowing the full potential of the community. And the reason for that is two-sided, right? On the one side, again, the Armenian government, there isn't a sincere, or haven't seen it other than our office, a sincere desire to open up the floodgates and just tell everyone, we need you really badly. Please come and be of assistance. And I think that's what needs to happen on our part. And the way to prove that that's the case, that's the sentiment, is by getting rid of these constitutional impediments, by the way, which were not created by this government, so they don't bear responsibility for it. It should be the most commonsensical thing for them to get rid of the legal barriers to Armenian involvement, diaspora involvement in Armenia. And on the other side, of course, are these unrealistic expectations, the venom that's being spewed by media in the diaspora, both party-controlled and old regime-controlled, which controls 99% of the U.S. Armenian media. Unfortunately, because again, they don't understand the consequences of what they're doing. They will come and go. They will. Armenia needs to stay here forever. And to try to artificially poison the relations between diaspora is just not very productive. Whatever problems there are, and there are many, we need to work out together. No one else is going to work them out for us. And again, ultimately, the best way to influence the situation is to be more involved in Armenia, not less. Not sit back under a palm tree and tell the people of Armenia how wrong they are in choosing one government or another, but to actually be involved, come and live here, or if you're not going to live here, be involved in other means, and express yourselves. You should. Every time a wrong decision is made by the Armenian government, the diaspora needs to stand up and needs to fight against this decision. They need to be vociferous about it. They need to demonstrate their displeasure, but all within the limits of being constructive. Otherwise, it just doesn't do any good.
Thank you, Mr. Sinanyan. Another question. Is there a dialogue established with Armenian structures in the diaspora? Are you working with them?
We're working with those that to work with Armenia. There are some who apparently don't. There because they're influenced by party interests, and that's time has shown is very problematic because again, the people of Armenia will decide who will govern this country. No party interests stand above the interests of our homeland, and the interests of the people of Armenia. So there are structures, even structures, that have called for the resignation of the current prime minister and its government. And despite that, we still work with them because, again, business of Armenian diaspora has to go on. We have to continue working with our people wherever they are, and especially for the benefit of our people in Armenia and the diaspora. If there are organizations that we've somehow overlooked or have projects or need anything or have ideas, let us know, please. Be more than happy to get in touch with you.
Mr. Sinanyan, another question from our live participants. Is Armenia also ready to work for the elimination of legal barriers, as you have noted before?
Well, some in Armenia are. I certainly, speaking for myself, am. And we need to work with the National Assembly, most importantly, especially when the issue of the constitutional reforms comes back on the agenda, as it was before the war, and work with them and make sure that these barriers are removed. They have really no purpose being there other than to retain the status quo in Armenia. I think the status quo has shown to be problematic. So why not open the doors for more talent, and why not open the doors for more professional skills coming to Armenia? I think it's in fact imperative that we do it ASAP. And again, something that the diaspora can apply pressure for on the Armenian government and join forces with us, and I'm sure we can accomplish this.
Thank you, Mr. Sinanyan. Has the government started paying the families of the fallen soldiers?
Yes, the government has started paying the fallen soldiers. Again, remember that resources are limited. Fallen soldier, the Hazar Dram Fund was created with the idea of paying out 100 and 150 soldiers a year. Those were approximately the number of casualties wounded and fallen in the past years. Of course, this war has created much larger number, much larger need, and the resources that are available are not sufficient. So as a result of that, I believe the 1,000 Dram Fund is expanding its levying of funds from Armenian citizens from 1,000 drams to 3,000 drams, and also looking for other creative ways of coming up with the money. But the decision has been made and will not change that every soldier that has fallen, so every soldier's family that has fallen, and every soldier that receives the status of a wounded veteran will be paid out. And we just need to make sure that the funds keep flowing so that we can make sure no one falls through the cracks.
On that matter, when is the All Armenian Fund to present a full financial accountability report?
Okay, so accountability report, again, we need to ask the Armenia Fund about that. Anytime you ask for that and this just keeps coming up, is that remember the money was sent for a certain purpose. And remember that our Armenia Fund is registered as a 501c3 in the US and in Europe. That's all I'll say about it. Those that understand have understood it a long time ago. Those that haven't will never understand.
Another question, are there any plans to visit Artsakh in the summer?
If that's referring to us, there are plans to visit Artsakh periodically, like we visit any other part of Armenia. So in the summer, in the fall, in the spring, and so on and so forth. One thing that I lobbied for in Artsakh was the non-imposition of visas or a new visa regime that was being discussed, because we want everyone who comes to Armenia over the summer and over the vacations to be able to actually visit Artsakh. I think it's very important, very important. They need to come and see Artsakh and understand that we still control a large part of it, and how important it is for us to retain that important part of our historic homeland. So as far as us, sure.
Mr. Sinanyan, what programs is our office suggesting to protect the Armenian identity? Do you feel like the Armenian identity is receding?
Sorry, I didn't hear the last. Can you repeat the question?
Yes. What programs is our office suggesting to protect the Armenian identity? And do you feel like we're going backwards in terms of the protection of the Armenian identity?
Well, throughout the world, throughout the diaspora, really doesn't matter where you are, there is a regression of the Armenian identity. The more generations live in the diaspora, the more both integration and acculturation takes place, which is normal. In the old diaspora, so old diaspora, the Middle Eastern diaspora, where Armenians specifically existed in a Muslim context, they were better able to self-isolate, and also self-isolation is also imposed from outside, and become a coherent group that was not willing to assimilate, and really, unless there was forced use against them, they kept their Armenian identity. Well, in the new diaspora, relatively new diaspora, whether it's the Western diaspora or Russia, those types of cultural, ghettoizations don't really occur. And as a result, we have open societies where Armenians don't feel that's different, and the process of assimilation goes on. We're also experiencing the closing of schools throughout the diaspora. Just in the United States, the last 20 years, we've had two of our in Los Angeles area, we've had two of our schools closed. So this is a process that's going on, and there's no running away from it other than to realize that it's happening and try to prevent it from happening too fast and slow it down. And I believe the only way to do it is by creating better brand. It has to be an attractive model for our youth to follow. So Armenia has to represent something that has potential, has future. That's something that's attractive. Otherwise, we will be swimming against the current, and that's not a good situation. Ultimately, of course, the only solution that there is, a long-term solution, is repatriation. Only living on your homeland in the long term can you retain your Armenian identity. Because one generation, two generation, okay, 5 generations, 7 generations, ultimately, assimilation will take place. And the only way to prevent it is by living on the homeland. Even if you look at the Jewish community, the repatriation that has taken place over the last 70 years is unprecedented. It's enormous. Same type of thing has to happen.
Mr. Sinanyan, a question in terms of your visits. So what is going to be the agenda for your visits to Russia and France? Are there any visits planned to the US?
Currently, right now, there isn't anything specific on the books because we don't want to have visits for the sake of having visits. Once we've worked on an agenda and there's a practical purpose for such a visit, where we have specific things that we have to work on, there'll definitely be a visit to the U.S. I'm sure at some point this year there'll be a visit to the United States, but that is not in the immediate future. In the immediate future, we're planning the visit to Russia. Again, the visits to Russia are very frequent and have to be very frequent because we have 2.5 million people there on a territory stretching half the globe. And France, a place that we're very actively involved with, a country where the community is very vibrant, has never disengaged to this day. We have numerous plans, numerous programs we're working on. And unfortunately, I've never been able to make an official visit to France. Time to do it.
Another question, Mr. Sinanyan. What were the lessons learned from the war against Artsakh in terms of our cooperation and our work with Armenian communities of the diaspora? Are the local authorities taking these lessons learned into consideration?
You know, we need to analyze these issues very deeply. I obviously have my experiences in this war, and all the things that didn't work and all the things that worked. The question seems to be kind of concentrating, I think, the deficiencies in Armenia. The lessons learned will have to come as a result of investigatory and evaluational study that has to be conducted about this war, because there's so many things that were wrong with this war. From starting from the preparation for the war that should have taken place over the last 26 years, to the shape of the Armenian governmental agencies, which deal with the war. Again, there is a dearth of managerial skills in Armenia. Management is lacking. It's worse than I can express in words. And you see that it reflected in every aspect of government, but you also see it reflected in the way the war is conducted. And this is a function of 30 years of bad management, bad government, bad education, failed to prepare good managers, and those that are really good have either left the country or have joined the private sector. So, again, fundamental solution to these issues, at least in the short term, while the Armenian educational system reforms itself and produces a new generation of people that have problem-solving skills and have managerial skills. Until that happens, the quickest solution is by moving to Armenia, bringing your skills, and deploying your skills for things to get better. The easiest thing to do is to sit there and just be angry and criticize. It's not productive. Again, these are very, very deep cultural problems, and those associated with the old regime need to own up to their problems. They need to take responsibility for it, because until you do that, the people in Armenia will not accept you. I have to say that because apparently it's not getting through. It's not getting through. So those that are constructive, those that understand that their skills are much needed in Armenia, have already outlined what the short-term methodology for improving things are. But of course, not everyone has to move to Armenia. Folks can be there and be constructive. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinanyan. Another question. Do you foresee any changes in the leadership of the Armenian structures within the Armenian community in the US? And do you foresee any new developments in that regard within the Armenian community in the United States?
The communities will themselves decide how they will change, uh, modify things. No, it's an organic process. It can't be forced from outside in any way. And this is a process that's ongoing all over the world, all over the Armenian diaspora. And I'm sure that any society goes through transformations and modifications. So I don't exclude that process. I don't exclude the likelihood of that happening. And progress is a good thing. I welcome it. We also need the new diaspora, so to say. Need folks that came from, especially former Soviet Union, the Republic of Armenia, those that fled Armenia during the last 30 years of bad management, especially the last 28 years, to start organizing into organizations, to become much more organized. Unfortunately, organizational community life has traditions for those that came from Armenia for understandable reasons. But they also need to become more involved, and that's happening in Europe, that's happening in Russia. I'm sure it'll happen in the United States as well.
Mr. Sinanyan, next question. How do you respond for calls of resignation against you?
I don't. Why would I? It's an opinion being expressed by some individuals, and they're more than welcome to express it. Sorry, I will resign when I feel is the right time to resign. The moment when I feel that my presence is a problem and I need to resign, I'll resign. That's a decision only I will make, and I will not allow for anyone to dictate anything like that to me. Again, those people need to understand that being responsible is actually being responsible, not calling for other people to do this or that. They need to first account for themselves. But will not resign because someone calls for it. That's nonsense. Will not resign because someone wants to weaken the current government through my resignation. I will not give them that pleasure. I will only resign when I decide it becomes obvious to me that my being here is not productive and that resignation is the right thing.
Thank you, Mr. Sinanyan. Another question in regards to the diaspora. What do you think is the mission of the diaspora now? Is Armenia going to propose any action plan to the diaspora?
Well, I already talked about that on, through mentioning various programs, various initiatives that we have, such as the constitutional reform and the legal reform. But it also has to be a two-way street, right? The diaspora also has to propose whatever format it believes that it would like. The problem with diaspora is because there's no one single diaspora, there are multiple diasporas. Even let's say in Southern California or in California, the Los Angeles community is very different from the San Francisco community, very different from the Fresno community. And if you look at the coasts, the East Coast and West Coast are very different, both by their composition and their outlook on life, their level of connection with their identity, with their level of connection to proper. It's very complicated. And again, I'm not concentrating on the US, this is also true of Russia. As someone residing in Moscow, in the center of Moscow, is very different from the same another Armenian that resides on the outskirts of Moscow and has a very different background, very different social status, economic status. So it's a very, very complicated issue, but it's important for us to get together and have discourse about this because too much is at stake. And again, I'm a strong believer in diaspora's full integration with Armenia's full integration with diaspora. We shouldn't be speaking on different languages. We need to speak the same language. I'm not talking a little. I know that someone out there is gonna get out there and start saying, "Did you see it? He called for the elimination of the Western Armenian language. He wants us to speak one language. No, I'm talking about the same cultural language. I'm talking about us understanding each other. It's a metaphor. So we need to speak the same language. We need to at least have the same goals towards which we move. And obviously, there always will be disagreements in Armenia, outside of Armenia, but the main goal, we should never lose focus.
Thank you, Mr. Sinanyan. Is it realistic to have 5 million Armenians living in Armenia in 2050, something that you have also talked about? So the question is it realistic to have 5 million Armenians living in Armenia by 2050?
Is it realistic to have 5 million Armenians living? Yes, I believe it is. Of course it is. Everything's realistic. Whatever we put our minds to, if we decide that that's going to be our sort of national goal, it is realistic. But it involves everyone, it's not just, okay, the government needs to do X, Y, and Z in order for that to happen. It also means that individuals have to take personal responsibility. And there has to be sometimes a degree of sacrifice being made. I think overall, we need to have that national goal, national ideal. That may be something that we had a very weak grasp of before the war, and because of the war, I think it's weakened even more. So we need to refocus. We need to just stop, take a deep breath, refocus, and get back at it.
Another question in terms of the structure of the office. Do you have any plans to have a specific department dealing with the Armenian community of the United States, a department that would be composed of American Armenians?
Okay, so let me tell you a little story. In 2013, when I just elected to office in the United States, I was in Yerevan, and the then diaspora minister invited me to go. Now, I remember back then, you remember who was in power. So when I went over, and they had something like 95 employees in the ministry, I asked, how many diasporans do you have working? And she had to think about it, and she said, we have one. Out of 95, almost 95 employees, one employee was diaspora. Right now, we have our staff, Acacia is what, 23 people? And I'm proud to say 8 of the 23 are diaspora. To be specific, 3 are Americans. So, long way of saying, not only will we do already, we are going to beef up our regional departments, and there will be a department dealing with the Americas, not just the US, but also Canada and South and Latin America as well. And we already have a very diverse staff. Like I said, 8 out of 23, it's not such a bad number, considering that during the old regime, only 1 out of 95 was. And we will move in that direction. We want good people that have lived in Russia, or born in Russia, understand Russia, to be deeply involved with running our Russian department. And the same with the US department, and the same with the European department. We don't talk about it, we actually do it. And the numbers speak for themselves. And we are going to go up to approximately 50, 55 employees in the High Commissioner's office over the next 12 months.
Thank you, Mr. Sinanyan. In terms of our database program, why hasn't Armenia had a database mapping the potential of the Armenian diaspora so far? And is the program going to be open for everyone? So why hasn't Armenia had a database of mapping the potential of the diaspora? And is it going to be open for everybody?
Why hasn't it had in the past? You'll have to ask the people in the past. Why has Armenia not been unable to create functioning governmental structures over the last 30 years. Why? I don't know. Ask yourselves. Those are very serious questions. What were people doing for 26 years since the ceasefire in 94? Instead of creating governmental structures, criminal government officials were becoming millionaires and billionaires, while the people of Armenia were fleeing the country in a million, and while government structures were not being fully. Why haven't we had that database? You go ask the old leadership. I know one thing. I'm here and I'm implementing this program. It will not be open to everyone. It is not for everyone. It's for the government. This is a government resource, and it is not going to be available to the public. There may be parts of it that we publicize. We'll decide how we want to do that. Sometimes folks may want to use information that we have in the database. I'm sure people can ask. We will decide if we want to do that, we want to share that information or not. But this is not a public database.
Thank you, Mr. Sinanyan. Another question in terms of investments. Can you please elaborate on foreign direct investments for individuals as well as institutional investors with a focus on the current legal and regulatory landscape?
Folks, these are fundamental issues. Again, we need to address not just legal framework, it's also cultural perception of how things need to get done. Cultural perceptions obviously are formed by the type of education that you receive. We had a very, very criminally corrupt government, and things only got done through corruption in the past. Okay, so since 2018, corruption has been removed, but now things aren't getting done because in the absence of corruption, the governmental bodies are not functioning well. That's how deep the role of corruption has been in governmental structures. So we need to change legal frameworks. We need to change educational frameworks. We need to have a cultural revolution in Armenia so that folks get things done because things need to get done, not because someone is personally interested in it. Need to get done. Things need to get done because the government needs it, because the state needs it, because it's the right thing to do. And as simple as that sounds, it's not very simple when it's on the ground.
Last two questions, Mr. Sinanyan. So the question is as follows. Do you foresee any return to the old regime? Will the people of Armenia allow such a thing?
Obviously, I'm not a soothsayer and it's impossible to foresee the future, but if anything that events that have unraveled, that have happened since November 9th have demonstrated is that the people of Armenia will not allow the criminal gangster regime to come back. They will not. They have no support here, and hopefully they will not. Because if that happens, then really we can't talk about reforms and getting things better. It's going to be back to let's just weaken Armenia even more, and let's just steal as much more as possible and move to the United States and buy homes in Glendale and buy mansions in France. And people of Armenia are sick and tired of that. They will not tolerate.
One last question. What is the most important message that you would like to address the Armenian diaspora with?
The important message is, folks, time to get to work. We need to be constructive, be productive. Time was against us before. It's more so against us now. Those that are constructive, we're working with very closely. We'll continue working with them. They will continue being an integral part of the Armenian people. Those that don't, hopefully will come out of their state of shock or stop being influenced by fake news and old regime controlled media. It's very sad. So those that are willing to stand with their homeland and stand with their people, tell your people and your homeland needs you more than. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinanyan. Fellow compatriots, we also thank you for your active participation today. Mr. Sinanyan, we thank you for your responses, for this open dialogue, constructive feedback that you were able to provide to our fellow compatriots. We look forward to our future collaboration, to our upcoming discussions with the Armenian community, and do not forget to reach out to us through our website, through our social media platforms. We're always there to assist our fellow compatriots, whether in the diaspora or in Armenia. Thank you.